going to talk about today.
Yeah, we could talk about that. You know, there's apparently it's not just what was that online retailer that was apparently trafficking?
Right, I heard a little bit about that. It was Wayfair, right?
Wayfair, yeah.
That was a weird. Did you see what that was all about?
I did. I saw it. They had pictures of furniture with girls' names on it, and they were really overpriced pieces of furniture, I guess.
Yeah. And it was the same furniture, but it had different names.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That was part of it. And then some people were claiming that they were cross-referencing those names with people who had gone missing.
No.
And they were able, and some of the names were pretty unique.
Uh-huh.
So it was like, some kind of like, I don't know, foreign name, not like a typical English name.
Right.
And then they would match it up and like, oh yeah, that girl went missing, a few weeks ago. I don't know if it's true. I mean, and listen, nothing surprises me at this point, but I saw a little bit about that. That was weird.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's really hard to do a conspiracy theory segment because all of them have come true already.
Yes.
Everything's so crazy in reality. The conspiracy theorists don't have time to make up fake like conspiracies.
Right.
We have the real thing.
I know it's not like, and conspiracy theories in some regard, like, they were always serious, but there was a levity to them at some, because people always like to joke about them and the tinfoil hat and all that. But like some of these things that are really real, like there's no levity to it. It's just like, this is seriously twisted. You know what I mean? So it's like almost, I don't even want to talk about conspiracy theories anymore.
I know. I think one of the big ones that have come out recently is with Epstein's whatever they call her, madam or whatnot.
Yeah.
Some of the files releasing that Bill Clinton was on the islands. Like, we all knew it.
Right.
But anyone who was defending the Clintons were like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. That wasn't true.
Right.
It's like, but that's a really big deal, guys.
Yeah. Oh,
so it'll be interesting to see what else comes out about that one for sure.
Twisted stuff, that's for sure.
Twisted. We should not talk about this anymore, though, because we're going to be taken down from all the social media sites.
Yeah, what the heck was that all about? I saw you tweet about
which one? Which time? Zuckerberg. Yeah. So there was the what was it? I even forgot what it was. My wife was telling me about it, like Save the Children or something like that. And they said it goes against their community standards.
Yeah.
To save children, apparently.
Yeah.
And you look it up and it says it's blocked. It goes against our community standards. We're not doing it. So I don't know. And then some people are pushing back and saying, well, maybe they were like just putting child porn on there with the hashtag or whatnot. But it's like, come on, with all the censorship that social media is doing right now, you don't think they could figure out how to block those, but still keep the hashtag?
Right. Well, and also, since when did, Zuckerberg or any of these social medias care about porn?
Right. I mean,
these social media, they don't care about that stuff. They'll get Trump's tweets off there too, sweet. But you put porn on there, you have no idea, how old the actresses are. That stays up there for days.
Yeah, it totally does. I think, if there was one like drain the swamp thing that I hope happens from all of this, is that all this child porn stuff and the child sex trafficking and all that stuff gets rooted out. Because I don't know exactly where it's all is. I've heard the music industry, Disneyland, obviously politics and all that stuff. I don't know if any of that's true, but I just hope if any of it is true, that it all comes to light and people are prosecuted for it, because that's just so disturbing.
Well, I've read some interesting articles that Trump, on human trafficking has been fantastic compared to the recent presidents.
Yeah.
And obviously there's always a lot more work to do, but if that's true, I haven't done too much research into it, but if that's true and Trump's been kicking butt in that regard, good on him, man.
I know that would get a lot of probably Christian voters on board with him that were on the teeter-totter on it.
That might be something to noodle with a little bit, and how, because I'm trying to develop my strategy for the 2020 election for my content. And that might be a way to go. I mean, that sounds good, man.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to be very careful though, because you're gonna get censored if you say anything that's against the narrative.
That's right. So exactly, and that's kind of why you have to be strategic about it. How you go about it, because you're absolutely right. They'll shut you down quickly.
We should develop like code words, like a whole nother language, like adopt the Elven language from J.R. Tolkien or something like that.
Some people do that.
Do they really?
I think so.
I don't have the time, but something like that would be neat. But like you see, Facebook took down a Trump video. Did you see that? Facebook took it down.
Yeah.
That's insane. Those are another thing in 2020 that if you would have said would have happened in 2019, you would have been laughed off the stage as being crazy, that somebody would take off a presidential candidates social media stuff.
What's amazing about it is it's the same people that spent, a couple years hysterical that, the Russians put some memes up on social media. They were interfering with the
Yeah.
election because they might have invented Pepe the Frog. I mean, who knows
Yeah.
what they're responsible for? And they're crying for 2 years about that. And then they're like, they're doing way worse than anything that was accused.
Okay. Well, you know what that means? They're just racist, right? They're racist against immigrants.
Oh, that's a good
Because
point.
if
Yeah.
Russians do it, that's wrong. But as them, white people from America, they're, that's okay.
I don't think Russians count as immigrants in their mind, though.
Oh, they don't?
No, that's just white people. That's
They're
just
all
white people
looped in.
with a strange accent, I guess.
And they even have white alcohol. It's just a weird culture, right? And I would have to say, you have called something right once again, AD. Once again.
I'm good at that every now and then.
You are really good at that. So before we were talking about closing down churches and what are we going to do when the flu season comes around? And we were kind of joking about it, comparing it to the flu. And no doubt yesterday, Dr. Fauci, the sometimes wearing face mask doctor,
Sometimes, yes.
sometimes wearing
only when there's nobody around him for like 70 feet does he wear masks.
He is starting to say that not only do we need to wear eye goggles now, which, come on now, if any self-respecting American wears eye goggles, like, you're clearly on the other team. You're done. Like, there's no hope for you.
Yeah.
But he was even saying he hopes this becomes part of our culture for every flu season as well. That gives me the chills, man, because there is a one little short step from wearing face masks to, hey, now you cannot meet in church. You cannot meet in groups. You got to social distance. We're doing it to businesses. We're going to do it to churches too for flu season, just like you were saying.
Well, what
you prophet, you
can't out stupid these people. Like I listen, when I was saying that kind of stuff, I was essentially, answering a fool according to his folly. Like, I was just being like, all right, you want to be dumb? I'll get double dumb on you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll go a step further. Well, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. You can't outdo them though, because every time you say something that you think, oh, this is just way too stupid, but at least it'll prove my point. A few weeks later, they're promoting it.
I know, it's crazy.
But the thing is, but how could we've lost this? So many of us have lost this argument. The only way is to say I was wrong the whole time, and I'm going to put a stop to this. Because how could you argue now to not shut down your church during every flu season for the rest of time?
Right.
You couldn't. You just have to say I was wrong. I changed my mind. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah. I don't see a lot of people doing that, because like a lot of these people that have shut down their churches, you never hear them admit they're wrong.
Well, that's a very good point. There's no way. I mean, how could you ever justify it? I mean, listen, even if this thing kills twice as many people as the flu, what you're saying, that 60,000 lives is not worth it, or however many it ends up being, 100,000 lives. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like it doesn't matter. Like, one life is worth it to these morons to shut down everything.
Yeah,
and it's just, I'm sorry, but that's a stupid take.
Right.
I love life too. I'm pro-life. I'm all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But one life is not worth shutting down the entire economy, shutting down the worship of the Lord, all of this stuff. It's not worth it. God's worship is worth more than lives are. It's just that simple. I'm not ashamed to say it.
I'm pretty sure that was in the bold print in the Gospels when Jesus said that we should follow him, that we're going to have to lay down our lives and expect to be hated by the world and persecuted.
Right.
That wasn't exactly fine print.
It's not. And it's not like, it's not a fun thing to talk about. I don't want to talk about that.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like I don't, that doesn't sound like my idea of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, this is what we're, Matt, I've heard this sermon before, like, where it's like, oh, like, we don't do this because it's fun. We do this because we love God. We don't do this because this is what we want to be doing on a Sunday morning. We do it because God's commanding it. Like, I've heard that sermon before. Count the cost, all that stuff. And it's like, okay, so how about when it actually happens, you go with it? Or is it just all talk? For a lot of people, I think it seems just all talk.
Yeah. And there's no way of hiding it now because their churches are closed.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to recover from that as a pastor?
I don't know.
Like,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but did you see Tom Buck zing 9 marks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so listen to this.
Yeah.
somebody was saying to him, because Tom was saying how like video church is not real church, right? Because
Right.
obviously it isn't. Like, and anyone who asks the question and says, I'm honestly asking, how is it not real church? Like, you're not honestly asking. I'm sorry, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, he zinged him because 9Marks either wrote a booklet or a book about how that multi-site campus thing where they put videos on the screen. Because you know how some pastors will preach and then they'll have other churches that they just pump in the video of the sermon.
Yeah.
There's a whole book about that, or a booklet about how that's not church.
Right.
And it's produced by 9Marks.
That's
so it's
so
like,
crazy.
So he just said it, and he didn't say anything. He was just trolling, because he did it like Trump. He just said, "Oh, you want to know how I know that that's not real church? I recommend this book by Jonathan Leeman." Because Jonathan Leeman knows this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He
right.
knows that that's not real church.
Oh, dude, that's just a whole nother level of I don't know if it's trolling because he's responding to someone's question to him.
I'm not saying he was trolling or he wasn't, but
Oh,
it was good.
yeah, that's like, dude, you're a master debater if you are able to reference their own material against them. Like, there's no better. There's nothing better than that.
It's no better than that.
That's why we love the Buck.
But I thought that was gold because
that was gold.
Because we all knew, like we've been talking about this. Like, we all knew what real church was before the pandemic. We all knew about this stuff.
Yeah, we
knew what to do during flu season. Like we managed. Somehow we managed. We got sick. We stayed home. That's not that complicated.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. So what I was going to say is we talked about last week and we kind of hard and we titled the show, like, why would you even go back to Southern Seminary with their statement that they made, making people just indefinitely agree to the government?
Yeah.
But that same question needs to be asked of churches that are closing and that are calling church that's online church. Like, why would you listen to them anymore? Like, why would you want to go back to that place? They're not on your team.
Or even better, Matt, think about this. If you let's just say you're one of these guys, you're just going to trust your pastor. Okay, fine. I'm okay with that. And you get an argument from them. Oh, we're having online church. It's not ideal, but it's just as good. You know what I mean? Like, we're still meeting as a church. That's what the argument people are making. No one will say it's as good, but they'll say we're still gathering. We're still obeying Christ. Why not just believe them and say, you know what? I got things to do on Sunday. I'll just stay home and watch it on the TV screen. You know what I mean? Like, how could you argue against that? Like, why wouldn't you just do that?
Yeah.
And then when your pastor says, "Oh, you got to come to church now," well, why?
Yeah. Because it says in the Bible, like, oh, well, then why weren't we meeting?
Right.
And this is like such a dangerous thing too. And I don't think we do a good job of this as Christians, as conservatives. And it's probably because we haven't developed the theology or the thinking of like how to respond to things. Is when we don't make our decisions on biblical foundations, then we're going to get caught in these traps all the time where we're just not going to have a good foundation to stand on.
That's right. It's a trap. You're right.
Every time. And it's always a bigger trap than the trial that we're going through. It's always going to come back to it's even bigger than the thing.
That's right. You're so right. And this is why like the whole idea. Do you remember that the 9Marks article? I think we talked about on this show, or maybe we didn't. Maybe we just talked about it on the side. But one of the arguments that Jonathan Leeman made about why you should not go to church, essentially, is that we're going to have a lot of opportunities to do civil disobedience, so we shouldn't blow all our capital on this one because it's in the middle of a pandemic, after all. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this is the argument where it's like, well, this one's not that enough of a deal to make the stand. We'll make the stand later when it's a really big deal. Yeah. But that's never how it works. Like once you compromise yourself, you tend to follow that logic. So that's why not compromising on the small things is so important, because it's never going to get easier. And once you've kind of twisted up the logic in your own mind, then it's always going to be easier to just make an excuse or to justify it to yourself. Because after all, we all wore the mask like they told us. We all closed our churches down for the first 2 weeks. So what's another 2 months? Like it was, if the logic held then, it holds now. Like, right. That's what people do. That's just the nature of people. So this idea that we're going to somehow find our backbone when they say no singing forever, it's just the droplets. They're just too dangerous. Like there's or even, did you see this one, Matt, where the governor of so-and-so ridiculous state said that racism is a public health emergency, a state of emergency?
That had to be New York, right?
I don't know. I don't even think it was. I think it
Oh,
might
my
have even
goodness.
been like a traditionally conservative state. I don't even remember.
I think it was Michigan, actually.
Maybe it was Michigan. Maybe it was
Yeah.
Michigan. But anyway, the point is, okay, so now we've already set the we caved immediately when they said it was a public health emergency, the COVID pandemic, it's going to kill us all. We caved and we had to shut down church for that. So what happens when they say, well, your church is too white and this is a public health emergency, so you're shut down until you find some more black people to come to your church? That sounds crazy, right? That sounds crazy. But what's your argument? It's a public health. Doesn't the government have the authority to do what's right in the interest of public health? Well, you've already given them that argument. And so now the only thing you can do is either be inconsistent or admit you were wrong all along. It's easier to just nip it in the bud when it's easy.
Yeah.
Right?
It gets harder and harder. Every time you capitulate, it gets harder and harder.
You described it perfectly, Matt. It's a trap. So don't fall into it. Don't give them an inch at all. I know it seems like humble and nice to, okay, well, you give them a little inch. Just don't do it. It's never going to get easier, and you're just going to find yourself capitulating more and more and more.
Yeah.
It's like sin, bro. It's like
it is sin. If we're missing the mark by definition.
So right. You're so right. It is sin. But the thing is, most people don't like their first sin isn't I'm going to go kill someone or I'm going to go cheat on my wife. That's not the first sin. It's like you cave to the first one where I was like, okay, well, I'm just not going to stop hating that guy. You know what I mean? I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to be jealous and envious of him. And then it grows and grows and grows until you kill him. And then it's the same thing with cheating. Like, it's not like the first sin you did was have sex with another woman. No, you started like, fantasizing a little bit, and you started and you never nipped it in the bud. And it's just like a little by little, it grows and grows and grows until you're in bed with her. So it's like, it's the same kind of thing. Like you're right. It is the same thing. It is sin.
Yeah. Right. And the little first step is thinking in the mindset of political capital. When you think that way at all, you've lost, because the equivalence from a biblical perspective of political capital, lightning just hit me across the street. The equivalence of political capital in biblical language is doing things in the flesh. That's how fleshly minded people think. That's You're thinking power, politics. How can I manipulate this situation to get what I want? What am I going to give to get something down the road? That is not how God works or asks us to work. So I'm glad these people admitted it, and we're starting to see why they're going along with the government. It's because they're fleshly minded.
That's right. Because that's how you're right, though, because that's exactly how politics is. It's like about compromise, give a little, I get a little, maybe I'll give you what you want now, but then I'll get, call in that favor later. But the thing is, like, God's expectations for his people, it's just complete surrender. You know what I mean? You can't follow the flesh anymore. You got to do things. You've got repentance is a change in the mind, right? It's turning from what you thought you should do to what God says you should do. And there's no compromise there. It's not like, all right, God, well, you're right on this one, but I'm going to hold on to this other stuff over here because it makes it easier for me to follow you over. That's not how it works.
Right.
It's like repentance means, no, God, I'm wrong. You're right in everything. And that's that.
Yeah. and even when it's not politically expedient, when it's not expedient for your health, for your well-being, it doesn't matter. We're not supposed to think in fleshly terms like that. It's so worldly. It's what's crazy is they're so in that mindset, they don't even realize they're admitting it when they say things like, it's political capital. I don't think it's wise. We are going to have to fight the LGBTQ down the road. It's like, we're not going to win the LGBTQ fight from any kind of political capital that we've stored up. We're not going to win that way. We're going to get slaughtered.
Yeah, they don't care about that. Like, you don't understand, like the liberals, they're not going to be like, well, you guys were great during the pandemic. And so I guess, maybe gays shouldn't be able to get married. That's not how they think.
Yeah, we're going to go back to civil unions because we respect you guys so much. You made such principled stands.
Look, well, okay, listen, we'll let you have church, even though we hate everything that you stand for, because you guys were great during that pandemic. You wore those masks. That was really good. Bravo.
We'll even let you take the goggles off when you're preaching. That's the kind of people we are.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the kind of guy I am. You don't have to wear the goggles. This is a problem. This is a common problem with all conservatives. You know what I mean? Like, conservatives are constantly playing this game of, well, we'll take the stand later. We'll take the stand later. And this is why every conservative these days, is that's not hitched to the gospel, hitched to the foundation of Christ. They're more liberal than the biggest liberal was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like we're constantly being pulled left. And so it's like, what we don't need to do is hold off the attacks against the Second Amendment. So what we don't need to do is be like, okay, we'll ban bump stock, but just let us keep the Second Amendment. What we need to do instead is start taking ground. What I mean by that is, not only do I want to not ban bump stocks, but actually I want to reverse the bans on automatic weapons. I want to reverse the bans on citizens owning tanks. We should be able to own it all. Yeah. Everything, no limits. That's what we actually should be doing, going for the whole thing.
Yep.
And that people are going to say, "Oh, that's crazy! Automatic weapons? Are you insane? Well, you think a civilian should own a tank?" Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they should. Right, and because like when we capitulate on those things, the argument even changes. I've noticed, and I love this about the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment wasn't about hunting. It wasn't even about protection when the police get defunded by the crazy Marxists. It was specifically to be against the government.
That's right.
And if we cannot have those things that the government has, then the whole point is gone. But see, even just capitulating on those things, like, okay, not automatic weapons, the argument itself changes. Like it stopped becoming about defending ourselves from the government to hunting, to protection from intruders, which it really wasn't the main point. Those were all assumed things. But because we started capitulating on certain little things, the whole like meaning of the Second Amendment changed. And I think that's true with every single thing we're fighting.
And bro, they're mocking us too. Like, and you're right. Let's go back to that. That's true in every single thing we're fighting, because you're right. That's a good point. But they mock you because then this is what the kind of stuff that the liberals say. They go, "Oh, you're gonna fight the government with your 9mm pistol?" They're like they're joking with us. And the thing is, like, well, first of all, if all of us had 9mm pistols, yeah, we could actually take some serious ground. But they understand that we've already lost this battle, because they're right. Because we're not trying to fight so that I can keep my 9mm. We're trying to fight so that I can have an AK-47 if I want to. I can have a M16 if I have to. Like that's the actual fight, and we've already lost that. And they're mocking us. They're like, "Oh yeah, you want to keep your 9mm so you could form militias?" And it's like, they're actually right. They should be mocking us, because that's a joke. That's not what we're after. We're not after a concealed carry, as important as that is. What we should have is artillery.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. And it's absolutely crazy. And I just wish that there were like Christian leaders besides John MacArthur and a few others that kind of understood this stuff. But we're so poor and bankrupt in our thinking with understanding the political plays that are happening.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this too, because I feel like now we are going to be talking about politics a lot, especially at the election, but just where we're at today. And I don't want to, and I'm thinking just personally, but for Reformgelical, and I think all of us as the Christians that are pushing up against this stuff, it's like our main goal isn't politics, American politics. It's the gospel and the lordship of Jesus.
That's right.
But the spiritual war is the umbrella, but politics is under that umbrella. And that's where a lot of the battles happen. So we may be talking a lot about politics, but it's under the umbrella of the spiritual battle that is really happening. And that's just where the enemy is using power to overtake us. Yeah,
that's right. No, that's very true. And when you say that Christ is the Lord, Christ is the King, Christ is the Master, like that's a very political statement to say. I mean, what could be more political? You're saying that Christ is in charge of all of this. He's the King of the Kings. He's the Lord of the Lords.
Yeah.
And it's like, so Christians should be very political. And now when it comes to the partisan politics, that's, there's some room for discussion there, but you're right. I mean, it's not politics just for Americans' politics' sake. It's for the King. I mean, we're here in the United States, and we ought to be working for the King, and that's what we're hopefully doing.
Yeah, and I think that is another great example of how us capitulating over and over again has changed the debate altogether. Sure. Where we shouldn't talk about politics in the workplace. We shouldn't talk about religion in any kind of public sphere whatsoever. And so now it's like, don't even talk about it in your church. Don't even talk about your Bible study, your podcast. You should be about the gospel. But we should be constantly talking about Christianity and the gospel when we're in politics. They should be intertwined, because we need to be saying, hey, as a politician, as a government, what does God say you should be doing? Oh, you're falling short? Don't worry. There's the gospel. and hey, you can repent and be forgiven, and here is how you change. This is how you change your mindset.
Right.
But we're not thinking that way as Christians at all. We're thinking, oh, we can't blend our politics with our Christianity. And again, it's because we've capitulated on so many different things. We're not even thinking about the battles correctly.
Yeah.
No wonder we're losing.
It's so true. And by the way, that's what makes this 2020 election so difficult, because, you know, we don't have great choices. I mean, I like what Trump has done. He's been way better than I thought he was by far. I mean, not even close to how I thought he was going to be terrible, but he wasn't.
Mhm.
But it's still not a great choice. I think everyone would admit that. You know, Joe Biden is just a non-starter, and, you know, Trump, one day I think he's great, the other day I think he's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, so it's not like this is how we got here, though, because we capitulated and we kind of just stayed out of it for so long that it's like we've got these terrible options now, you know,
Mhm.
and so we've got to make the best. We got to make the best choice with what we've got at this point.
I know, man, but I don't know how you still cannot vote for Trump. Again, I didn't vote for him the first time. I don't know how I cannot vote for him this time. You look at things that are happening in New York with murders going up 150%, defunding $1 billion.
I heard like
$1 billion
robberies were up like 300% on the Upper East Side or something like that.
Yeah, and they're taking $1 billion from the police force on top of that.
Yeah.
And the thing is that is a microcosm of what they're going to do. The state, like, is that where we want to go? Is that a step forward or a step away from the gospel, or just from what God wants?
Dude, I don't know, man, but it's all pretty crazy, and I think you're right. I mean, what you've been saying this whole time, it's like it all starts with, you know, these small compromises, these small things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think you're going to make the big stand and you're not making the small stand, you're kidding yourself. You know, I know I felt this way myself, where it's like we'd all like to think that when the time comes and the executioner has his axe over our head and he says, deny Christ, we all think we're going to be the guy that says, no, I won't deny Christ, and we're going to get our heads chopped off. But the thing is, if you won't even go to church when the government says no, then you wouldn't be that guy. You would be the guy that would deny Christ to save his head.
Oh, absolutely.
No question. And look, I'm not telling you that I'm like this courageous guy, but I'm not kidding myself that if I compromise on the small stuff, that somehow I'm going to take the big stand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm very may well deny Christ. Like I'm not proud of it. I don't know. I wouldn't know until I'm in the situation.
I like to think I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I like to think I wouldn't. I hope I wouldn't. But you're right. The situation is unique. We've never been in that situation before, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know. And it's funny. You were talking about a little bit today on your show, on your podcast, about how like sometimes people think this is easy, what we do. Oh, it's easy to get on the internet, talk to live on the internet, you know, without any editing. It's like, dude, you should try it sometime. If you think this is easy, you should really try it. I was thinking about the first 5 or 6 shows I did, I recorded them like 3 or 4 times over and over.
Yeah, we're talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then what always happens is your best one, you forgot to turn on your mic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dude, 2 days ago, I accidentally deleted the audio recording. Yeah, I did. So it's still making rookie moves. But anyways, like saying these things and calling us to a higher standard, like it's hard. And because we're not perfect. We're not up here saying like we have it all figured out. And I forgot, someone said like gave us a good compliment on Twitter. And then Marcus Pittman said, you know, this gives me imposter syndrome. And it's like, yeah, we are kind of imposters. Like we don't have it figured out. We don't have all the credentials, but we're trying to make the stands in the little things. We're not at the point. We're not pretending that our heads are about to get cut off. Yeah. We don't know that we're going to be brave and more brave than other people, but like we understand what's happening in the play. And so we're just talking about it. Yep. It's difficult. It's hard. Like there's a lot of spiritual warfare that goes along with this. But at least we're trying here. Like a lot of these people are saying like, oh, you know, it's so easy. Like, what are you guys doing? They're not even making a stand now with anything.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, that, you know, this is a little piece of advice that I've noticed, you know, when you insist on these small stands, you know, when it comes to like the churches being closed, the masks, all that kind of stuff, you have to be ready for the scoffers, right? Because there's going to be Christian and non-Christian scoffers that are going to be like, oh yeah, you guys have a persecution complex. Yeah, you guys are not being persecuted. You just can't go to church during the pandemic. Oh, poor you. You know, like you're going to get people like that, and you just got to be ready for it because there's nothing you can do to stop them. Number one, so don't worry about it. And number two, again, it's like these are the small stands. Nobody's saying that our heads are being chopped off. Nobody's saying that we're going to be lit up like Roman candles. Nobody's saying that. But what we are saying is that these are incremental steps towards worse things that we don't want to deal with. I don't want to have to deal with going to jail. But if I have to, I mean, for something as basic as going to church, I've been to jail before. It's not the end. It's not fun, but it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'll do that. I don't want to have to deal with, a prison sentence. Like, I don't want to have to do that. But if we don't take the small stands, it's only going to be a matter of time, so don't worry about the scoffers, that kind of thing.
Oh my
We
gosh.
have some questions here, but Matt, why don't you wrap up what you want to say, and then we'll do some questions. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, we'll do some questions. I just want to say, so to summarize all of this is, one, AD is going to have an ERLC article vaguely written about him, about not listening to online pundits that have been to jail.
That's right.
But we need to just remember, guys, that when we're capitulating on the battlefield, the argument and what we're fighting for will change. So let's make sure that we're pushing back and that we are really focusing on what matters and not have that Overton window shift on us, because I think that's really important and one of the reasons that we lose a lot of these fights. All right, so let's go to some questions.
All right, so we've got a couple things here. So, oh man, I had the questions and now I'm seeing a bunch of other comments.
Oh my gosh, you got to scroll up. While you're looking at that, I should just say we never did an intro.
We just started talking about
sloppy. We just started talking. Yeah,
that's okay, man.
Always gets us.
Oh man. So somebody was saying, I'm trying to find it. Okay, here it is. So somebody said, Jack says the megachurch celebrity pastor format will surely be forced to adapt. And I think he was talking about, I don't think he asked the question, but he was talking about when we were talking about the whole idea of churches closing down, and basically mega churches in general are shutting down. Would you think that's fair to say, especially the woke ones?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
what praise God for that.
Do you think that they'll be forced to adapt, and do you think it's a good thing?
Man, I don't know. I think they are adapting in a lot of ways as far as how they are doing church, quote unquote. I mean, they're shutting down. They're not opening for another year. They wouldn't do that unless they figured out another way to bring in revenue. Because if their online tithing wasn't a thing, if they couldn't tithe online, I guarantee they would be open.
So a lot of these churches took the PPP loan, so maybe they're able to survive on that. I don't know how much they've taken, but a lot of churches have.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, but like, why would you even want to go back to that church again? I think that this is again an advantage of God's judgment on. It's not just fire and brimstone, and it's just destruction for destruction's sake. But I think in God's judgment, and I'm learning this going through this, is that there is great clarity that happens from this, and so who cares what they do? You shouldn't be going to that church. We shouldn't be worried about that church. We shouldn't be taking them seriously anymore because they're not walking the walk. Even if they say something that sounds good, like, oh, we should just make the sacrifices and go to church because, give up football or whatever it is.
Right. But
then they close down when there's this situation the government tells you to. Well, why listen to them on anything? I just don't think we should take them seriously and care what they do, honestly.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think one of the things I mentioned in my show today is that I think if you drew Venn diagrams about churches that were closed and then churches that are woke, there would be significant overlap between the churches that are closed and the churches that are woke. Obviously, it's not a 1-to-1 correlation, and there's very legitimate churches that closed down at some point during this pandemic. I'm not saying that that's not the case, right. But the facts are that I've heard multiple reports. I don't know if you've heard this too, Matt, that smaller, suburban and rural churches that have stayed open throughout all this are seeing lots of visitors, lots of increase in numbers, and it's basically because real Christians that are at these woke churches are trying to find somewhere to worship, and they're going to these smaller churches, and it's almost it's amazing because that's a sovereignty of God kind of thing. Like these churches that have decided to take the pulpit of Christ and to preach all kinds of foreign ideologies from it, they have shut themselves down. Like it's not even like they've just decided we're just not going to meet for the rest of the year. We're not going to meet, and like you got to praise God for that. That's sovereign. That's God's sovereign hand to shut them up for time, and the legitimate Christians there. Because listen, Christians that are woke that aren't like legitimate Christians, like liberals and stuff like that, they're not looking for another church to work. They're just hanging out. You
No,
know what
of
I mean?
course they
They're
are.
hanging out. But there are a lot of legitimate Christians that get emails from all the time. Man, I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about leaving my church. Like, I don't know what to do. And my heart goes out to people like that, but they're looking for other churches. And so they're going to end up at a Christ honoring, we're going to go by the book kind of church. And that's a sovereign hand of God kind of thing. And I praise God for that kind of thing. And I think those mega churches that have gone down the woke line, they're going to end up, they're going to end up losing some legitimate people, which is a good thing.
It is a really good thing for the people specifically.
For the people, yeah.
And I know this is going to be a blanket statement and it's not true in every single case, but like, praise God for that, because a lot of these people would be going to these churches and maybe even starting to like drink the Kool-Aid and just slowly hearing about it and slowly believing it. But in a lot of these churches that have closed down, you should have left anyways.
Yeah,
like the
true.
reason that they're closed down is not
Right.
because they closed down, but it's because of the other things beforehand. Just like
Yeah.
your kids lose their faith in college, not because they went to college and the college broke them. It's because they were being indoctrinated in high school and junior high and elementary
That's true.
school.
That's
So
true.
to these churches, they're not just bowing down to the government because the government just told them all of a sudden. Well, maybe the government was a little too big in their lives beforehand, and they were the woke people that are looking to the government to solve their sin problems and all their other problems. And that's probably been in their doctrine and probably been in their teaching beforehand. You might not have noticed it. So praise God they've closed down because the government told them to. You should get out anyways.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about this whole thing is God has given us a very kind of easy sort of litmus test for church, finding. Like when you're looking for a church, sometimes you don't really know the exact questions to ask because, so many of us have been to churches where, we ask them questions about doctrine and, they know the right answer, you know what I mean? Because they went to seminary, they know what the right answer is. And then you get there and it's like, oh, and they're also singing Bethel songs and like all kinds of shenanigans, you know what I mean? And so it's sometimes it's hard to find it out, but, these days, it's like, okay, it's a very easy litmus test. Like, it's like, I saw this from Michael Foster, I think. He said, if you want to know where your pastor's at, ask him if Romans 13 would apply if the government demanded that we all get the COVID vaccine. Like, would it be a sin against God to not get the COVID vaccine when the government, insists that you do? Yeah. And their answer there would be very telling. You know what I mean? What would it take for you to close down church again for flu season? Like easy litmus test questions like that. What was your response to COVID? Mm-hmm. I think you said that on this show, Matt. Like when you're looking for a church, like that's a good question to ask. Like, how did you handle this whole situation?
Yeah.
And if it's just like, well, the government said so, like you kind of know where you are right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were talking about that where it's not even necessarily the answer. It's more how did they come to that answer? Like if you did shut down for a little bit, why? Was it because you were really looking out for the health of your people and you didn't know? Like, okay, cool. But if it's, the government told me to, or something to that effect, well, that's a big red flag.
Here we've got a comment from Plata Pura, and this is my problem with Trump because I think Plata's right here. It's like on the one hand, like I think Trump has done some good stuff. There's no question about it. We talked earlier about some of the sex trafficking, the human trafficking stuff, and lots of bonus points for a lot of things he's done. He's had great days. Mm-hmm. But then I agree with Plata here. Like the money creation that's going on, just endless printing money. He likes it. He wants it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't like that. I don't think that's going to help in the long run, but so like, that's my problem. And I'm not saying everyone has to agree with me on monetary policy. What I'm saying is that's my problem because I think that's very damaging to the country. And then on the other hand, he does some things that are really good for the country. So it's like but I want to stress, like, I think we got to this place where we have someone that is such a contradiction at times is because of small compromises that we've made. We have to make a choice here. And it's like, on the one hand, he's like, he's doing things that hurt. On the other hand, he's doing things that are great. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I've been noodling with is looking at the differences between the men, because the monetary policy thing, for example, both men are going to do that. There's nothing you can do. That's just what we do. We're destroying the currency, and that's that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of one thing, Plata, that's kind of one way I would respond as far as supporting Trump versus not supporting Trump. It's like Biden is going to do the same thing with the money supply, obviously.
But he's going to do far worse things. He's going to be continuing to appoint people that are going to kill babies and the judges.
Right.
He's going to be all for defunding police officers. And most of all, we don't know who's controlling him because he's not going to be making decisions himself. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I just can't even believe this is even an issue because he's not in his right mind, obviously.
No, not at
There's
all.
no question. I mean, this is very clear. And it's not like when people say, "Oh, George Bush, he's crazy. Oh, he has low IQ. Oh, Trump, he's crazy." Like it's not like just one of those things that people say. Like just listen to him talk for a few minutes and he doesn't make any sense.
No, not at all. And it's funny. I was listening to that clip. It's been going around today where he compares or he says something like, "Hey, dude, don't ask me about an IQ test. Of course, I haven't taken an IQ test or a memory test or whatever it was. Like, dude, I ask you if you took cocaine," and they're making it like a black thing, like, "Oh, like how dare you, so racist or whatnot." But the thing is like 3 weeks ago, he said he was getting tested all the time for his memory, and he was fine. So he was forgetting that he was getting tested for his memory loss. But going back to this choice between the two that are not really good options, I really think this is kind of part of the symptoms and the result of the church just not being faithful.
Sure.
And it goes along with that, that great verse that everyone loves using. If my people would humble themselves, seek my face, I will heal their land, and restore it. Well, part of that is that godly leadership would rise up. And I think we have to look at ourselves as a church in a lot of respects. Like we got to get this philosophies of man out of our church. We need to return to worshiping God alone, to worshiping God, period. Right. We got to get back into opening up our churches. And then maybe we can start expecting politicians to be godly men. But until we're going to be godly as a church, like how do we expect it for a president? Come on.
100%. 100%. Like we can't really lament the choices that we have and the things that are happening when half of our churches are closed. You know what I mean? Like we're not even being faithful in the little things. We're not even doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. How can we? It's like the guy who's watching like a show on TV and he knows everything that everyone on the show should be doing, but yet he's just sitting on his butt doing nothing. It's like, how can we expect the government to do what they're supposed to do if we won't even do the basic thing that we're supposed to do? Right. Meet on the Lord's Day, sing songs to the Lord, lay hands on the sick, and administer the sacraments. Like what would we expect?
Right.
You know what I mean? What would we expect? And the truth is, like God blesses his people. And so we would expect that and he blesses obedience. So we would expect that if we were obedient as his people, that he would bless us. And part of that blessing would probably bleed over into the nation that we're in. I would assume. But we're sitting here. That's a good point, because I'm sitting here complaining about Trump not being great. And it's like, yeah, but like,
Tim Keller's not been great lately either. So, I mean,
it's like, what do you know what I mean? Like, what do you expect?
And it's like, we are not making the right decisions because they're hard, quote unquote, with worshiping God. Like we're just doing what the government says. Romans 13 it, or we're saying, oh, we're looking out for the health of our people. But God commanded that. So we're not going to make hard decisions ourselves on something more important than monetary policy. But then we expect a heathen who isn't a Christian to stop the whole way the economy functions based on fiat money and monetary policy. We're expecting him to just turn it on a dime, but we won't even faithfully worship God. Like that's kind of like the plank and splinter thing in my mind, if anything, right?
I'll tell you right now, the super Trump optimists. There's a lot of super Trump optimists that you might be aware of. Okay, and they think they think that he's actually intentionally trying to destroy the dollar to bring us back to the gold standard. I don't think that that's true, but that would be interesting.
I've been trying to stay away from economics right now because that's totally boring to most people. I actually love it and I want to get into this so bad. But here, I'll just say this, is in this global economy, I don't think it matters about any individual nation's currency as far as how much money you print. It has to be the most trusted currency. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be backed by the gold, because if everyone is doing it, which they are, who's backed by the gold standard anymore? So there's nothing to compare it to, because like, for example, if the American dollar crashed from printing the money for not being linked to gold anymore, like where would they go? To another country that's printing money, right? It's the exact same thing. So the game isn't who can be on the gold standard and who can be responsible. It's who could be the most responsible, who could be the one who's most trusted. And that's it.
It did take us quite a while to get to negative interest rates.
We were the last ones. Everyone else is already there. That's my point. Negative interest rates are terrible, but everyone else was terrible before us. So, I mean, it is terrible, but it's not as terrible as everyone else. And that's the game we're on right now. It's like we can make monetary policy that's terrible, but as long as it's not as terrible as everyone else, our economy isn't going to be hurt from it as badly, in my opinion. All right, let's see. More questions. Are you post-mill yet? Definitely not. I think that's directed to me.
You're a monetary squish.
I am a monetary. Oh,
what did
my
you
goodness.
say about post-mill? Did you make a confession?
No. I was just, someone asked me if I was post-mill, and since you are post-mill, I'm assuming that was directed to me.
Definitely directed towards you.
No, I'm functional post-mill. I am theologically historic pre-mill.
That's fine.
Hello from Kansas. Hello from Haiti. Jeff, welcome from Haiti.
Amazing. Nice that you're here.
That is nice. Have they recovered yet?
From what?
Are they still having issues? I honestly haven't heard about them at all since.
Yeah, it's crazy. Our news cycle is crazy. Like, you know, for a couple of weeks, it'll be like the only thing you hear about is a certain country or a certain situation. Then it's just like in a day, it disappears. You don't hear anything.
And no one ever hears about it
again. This is weird around here, man.
Yeah, Jeff, I would love a direct message. I don't know where you're listening from. I think it was Facebook. Let me know how you guys are doing over there and how we can pray for you. That'd be great. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about, and I think this is really important for us to understand, is the consequences of what's going to happen to John MacArthur. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, which the LA is second only to San Francisco as far as liberal cities in California. They're loony. They're crazy. They have the worst traffic in the world. And one of their solutions is to redo one of the lanes in one of the major streets in LA and make it a bike lane to incentivize people to get out of their cars and ride their bikes everywhere. Like, this is the kind of thinking that comes from LA. They're crazy. But this is what he said. He announced that he is authorizing the city to shut off water and power to any houses or building or businesses that are hosting any parties or unauthorized large gatherings. Right. It'll begin Friday night, which will be the night when most people see this. And the LAPD will respond, then contact DWP, which is the water and electrical union for LA, to cut it off. So they are going to cut off people's electricity and water supply if they're meeting in groups that Eric Garcetti does not seem appropriate.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, like, if this is going to happen to John MacArthur's church. You would think it would, right?
You would think, yeah, you would think, because I can't imagine that there's a gathering larger than that one. Mm-hmm. Would you think that at this point? I mean, I can't imagine that there would be. So, a couple things I thought about this. So, as far as you know, just gatherings that they don't approve of, whatever, it would take a lot of guts to turn off the power to like a home or something like that. That would take a lot of guts because you don't know what's in the home. It could be someone could be on a respirator. Someone could need their insulin chilled. You know, so that would be probably not going to happen, right? Like, let's just face it. Maybe they would. Who knows? These people are sick.
Yeah.
So this is. I have to say this is probably only about John MacArthur. What would you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think so too. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. But to respond to the guts to be able to turn off their electricity in LA, in Orange County, in fact, I think Southern California, if I remember correctly, they would have things called rolling blackouts, where they would schedule times where they would turn off electricity for blocks. And you would be allotted a time where you would just accept that you don't have power for 3 or 4 hours. You know, it could be longer than that. So there is precedent for it.
I'm not a California guy. I didn't think that kind of thing happened in the United States. So,
dude, communist California, man, it is terrible there.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens in third world countries.
I know. They are a third world country. There's homeless people pooping on the streets. Yeah. No regard. They're letting out prisoners. I mean, it's a third world country.
Okay, so let's just say this is primarily about John MacArthur. You're going to shut down his power, his water, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something attached to that because I think they would have to know that wouldn't be enough to stop them. So would there be some kind of like law where if you don't have toilets or something like that if you meet that you're in some kind of violation, you get fined or something?
Oh, I'm sure there is. And there's tons of those kinds of things.
That's got to be the end game, right? Like they're trying to probably find him out of existence or something like that. Because it can't just be about the electricity and water. Who cares? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you know, then all of a sudden the electricity goes out and you don't have your exit signs or something. Who knows? That could be a 20-year sentence. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and they've already threatened him with fines and jail time just in general already.
I really hope he does not get put in jail or whatever. But if he did, I mean, that would have to be a turning point for this country. It would have to be, or we'd be just toast.
Yeah, I honestly kind of hope he does. And like, sorry, John MacArthur.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. I know exactly what you mean, because that's actually almost how I said it, but I changed my mind.
Yeah, I'll take the fall for that.
I hope he doesn't, but like, in a way, it would be epic for the church. It would be nothing could clear up who's who in the church more than something like that.
Mm-hmm. I shared something on Facebook where it was someone else who said it, but basically the intent or what was being said about it was like all of his contemporaries are gone. He's like the last of his era to be here preaching faithfully. He's like really old. Like the people that he kind of was a contemporary with have passed away. They're gone to heaven. And here he is fighting the battles that younger men should be fighting. And he's all by himself doing it. And they were just basically like, praising God for him and doing this kinds of thing. But like, if that would be the thing that turned this country back from all of this, what a great way to finish your ministry, man. If that is how John MacArthur finishes his ministry, with going to jail over faithfully worshiping God in defiance of the government, and that is the thing that changed the tide. I mean, I would love for that to be the way I go out finishing strong, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I don't think, there in my video today, I said that there are people, don't make no mistake, there will be Christians that if he gets arrested, will be very glad that he got arrested. Mm-hmm. And there's people that hate him for ridiculous reasons, but there's going to be people you wouldn't expect that would be like, yep, right thing to do for him to go to jail. Because I remember when this whole thing started, that crazy charismatic guy got arrested, and I saw tons of Reformed Christians saying, good, he should have been arrested. And I was just that's kind of what set me off on the whole thing. And I think I actually lost traction on my YouTube channel for going in on churches being closed for too hard, because I thought that was so insane that people were happy about it. Lots of people that I would not expect, people that I respect very greatly, were like, oh yeah, he should have been arrested. Yeah, definitely. And I just couldn't believe it. And the thing is, like, if John MacArthur were to get arrested, I don't think there would be no question where people stand and who's who in the church based on the responses.
Yeah, it would definitely bring things more to light.
It would make things so clear. And I saw an article, and I didn't watch the video attached to it because I didn't want to get sad, you know what I mean? But it was apparently like John MacArthur saying like all his friends have abandoned him on this issue and stuff like that. I don't know what the video. This is all secondhand because I didn't watch the video. Right. But man, that's sad. That's a sad place to be. But at the same time, the way the apostles handled that kind of stuff is, I'm sure that they were full of anxiety and sad. But when they were released from jail, it said that they were rejoicing because they were found worthy to be dishonored for the name of Christ. Mm-hmm. And so, if John MacArthur were to ever hear this and something like that were to happen, and he's all alone, he's got, the friends that he's built over years in the conference speaking circuit and stuff like that have abandoned him. I'm sure that the man knows this, but he should rejoice for being found worthy to suffer dishonor.
Amen. And I think while those people are abandoning him, like, we have a great opportunity being younger to support him in that. And I just think there's a lot of people that went to Paul in prison and went to Peter in prison and provided for them, gave them encouraging past letters along. Like, if this does happen, there is a great opportunity for us to support him, pray for him, and write him letters and things like that. And we should do those very things. Let
me ask you this, because this is something that's been coming up a little bit, and I honestly don't really understand it. But I've seen a number of comments, some on my YouTube channel, and I'm not mad at these comments. I just don't understand this perspective. Where they're saying that like people are like making too much of John MacArthur in this. Like, they're saying like they're like idolizing him. Like, it's so clear that you worship John MacArthur. And I'm very befuddled by that, because I know some people hate John MacArthur. They just do. I get it. I get that. That doesn't confuse me. That's just hatred. I get it. But I haven't really said too much about him. I've just said I'm very proud of him. I'm very happy that he's doing what he's doing, things like that. And it's just like, so what is that, Matt? Have you seen any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I have seen a lot of that stuff. And my thought is, we're not worshiping him. We're just thankful that he's doing what he should. And in reality, every other leader that is in a leadership position should be doing the same thing, where it's not just one guy that we could be getting in trouble for or being attacked for worshiping him. Because in reality, it should be all of you guys, but none of you did it. So
Some
it's
did.
on you.
Let's just be fair. Some did.
Okay, some did.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. Many
not
people
at that
haven't.
level.
Right.
Right.
And the thing is too, like, I'm not saying that there were pastors of smaller churches and stuff like that were doing this from the beginning. They got it right from the start, tons of them that just never closed. Well, my brother's church was one of them. And the thing is, like, I'm very proud of my brother's church. He's one of the elders, he'd be one of the ones responsible. I'm very proud of them. And don't want to take anything away from those guys. Those guys did it right. Good for you.
Yeah.
But there is something special, in my opinion, about someone who has as much to lose and as much to risk doing it. Because my brother's church, they're in a sleepy town, kind of close to Pittsburgh. Nobody really pays any attention. No one's going to turn off their water. Maybe they would. I don't know. But no one really knows that they're meeting because nobody knows that they're even there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's wrong. But John MacArthur does something like this. Everybody knows he will become a target. He's already a target. And so there's something to look up to for someone knowing that they're going to do something and knowing they're going to be a target for doing it and doing it anyway, because they think it's the right thing to do now. Yeah. He should have done it from the beginning. We all get that. I'm not here to say I told you so, but what I am here to say is that there's something to be commended there.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, I'm proud of my brother, but he never thought he would become a target.
Right.
He has no notoriety. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good when a pastor is just minding their own business and doing what they got to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this guy knew. I mean, he knew that he was going to be invited on Fox News and stuff like that. He knows all that stuff, and he's going to be targeted, and the mayor's going to go nuts. And he did it anyway. That's commendable, I think. I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. The stakes are different, and again, the stands are all important, like you're saying.
They're all important.
And like, for example, like I'm going to a Presbyterian church that's Reformed, and I'm going there because they were that faithful church that never closed. They have I can trust their thinking, their pastor, because one, they're doing what they're saying they were preaching, and I can go to them. I've heard them. I've talked to them about it. And now I'm going to be going there as long as I'm living in this area. I left my other church, and that's why that stands important, because it's giving a place for all of us to go. But John MacArthur is important for a whole nother reason, because it's kind of like a king almost of the Christianity. Like, we need these lords to make these stands, and the importance of the lords or the people that are big Eva to do this. It's like it's just a different kind of battlefield, I guess. I don't know. They're both equally important, but they're just different roles in my head, in my mind. But the one thing that and someone already had kind of talked about it in the notes, in the comments, kind of stole my thunder there, is that this quote from Mayor Garcetti proves that the battles that we fight aren't necessarily about what we think it is, or what we say it's about. Okay. Because if it was about the health of people meeting together, they wouldn't shut off water. They wouldn't make it an unsanitary place. They wouldn't shut off electricity. Those are things that are going to make it worse. Those are going to be things that are going to make it a bigger health crisis. Those are going to make it things that are going to cause more disease. And it just proves it's not about health. Health is the vehicle of attack. Health is the way they're manipulating us into bowing down to their state religion. And that's the other thing we need to be wise about. We need to be aware of the goalposts moving, and we need to be aware of the underlying real issues and attack those.
That's right. Amen. That was well said. Good point.
Thank you very much. That's why you're my co-host. I'm just kidding. Last question that we need to address. You are going to the Fight Laugh Feast conference, are you not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I am too. I just booked my hotel. Hilton Honors plus the Fight Laugh Feast discount. It's really nice. It's a nice little discount.
I like it.
Are you bringing your family, or are you coming solo?
I think I'm going to end up coming solo. We were initially going to all come, but it's looking like I'm going to be by myself. So
yeah, we're going back and forth with it too. And then driving versus flying. It's like it's 10-hour drive, an hour flight. It's like,
and the flight's a big hassle because of everything that's going on. You know what I mean?
I know. And then I'd have to check my gun, because I'm not going anywhere without my gun nowadays. These crazy fools out here.
I like it.
Yeah, of course. So I would just say, hey, if you want to come out, come on out. We're going to be there to Nashville, Tennessee, October 1st through 3rd, Fight Laugh Feast conference. Go over there and come meet us. Come say hi to us. And just remember, I'm packing for all you crazy people, especially from last week where we were getting.
I'm hanging out with Matt.
Yeah. It's like, why is everyone just standing behind Matt? Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to, you can follow us on Reform Jellicle wherever you are on social media. We're on YouTube and all the podcasts. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everyone on the live chats. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless.